realized the house had learned to breathe with me, to keep my secrets.
Entry 5. Suits and Smokes, Chicago, Illinois, 1961 to 1962. My name is John. This is my diary. Written for no one. Meant for no eyes but mine. And yet here it is. Pulled from beneath floorboards and false bottoms. Recovered from places that learn to keep secrets the way churches keep confessions. Silent. Sacred. Sealed. Tonight I write about beginnings. The suit. The cigarette. The first taste of control that didn't come from pain but from attention. These were the years when I learned how people mistake charm for goodness. How a handshake can hide a leash. How the right smile opens doors that should stay locked. The South Side taught me survival. The strap taught me endurance. The migraines taught me focus. But 1961 taught me transformation. How to stop being the boy who took correction and become the man who gave it. How to trade the stoop for the storefront. Motor oil for aftershave. Whispered prayers for whispered promises. Some people call it ambition. Others call it progress. I call it evolution. The natural selection of a boy who learned that the world rewards performance over truth, appearance over essence, the mask over the face beneath it. So if you're reading this, sit still. Watch the smoke curl. Every word here was practiced in mirrors and polished in smiles. And every one of them is true. Truer than the lies people tell themselves about who I was, what I wanted, what I became. Let me show you how it started. How the boy with headaches became the man with plans. How John became John Wayne. How the victim studied his lessons well enough to become something else entirely. Light one up if you got 'em. This story tastes better with smoke. Chapter 1. The first job, 1961. The headaches had dulled into a steady hum by then. A reminder, not a punishment. Like tinnitus after too many years near the L tracks. Present but manageable. Background noise you learn to ignore until it suddenly matters again. I'd left the South Side for the first time. Traded the stoops for storefronts. And the smell of motor oil for aftershave and starch. My father said I looked like a fool in that blue suit. Who you think you are? Some kind of big shot, he muttered, not looking up from his paper. I said nothing. Silence had always been safer. Besides, his opinion didn't matter anymore. I was becoming someone he couldn't touch with his strap or his scorn. The job wasn't much. Assistant manager at Florsheim Shoes on State Street, downtown Chicago, where the real city lived. Not the broken streets and factory smoke of home, but clean windows and polished floors and customers who smelled like money instead of sweat. The store was a cathedral of commerce. Rows of leather arranged by color and style. Polished bottles lined up like communion wine. The quiet shuffle of customers pretending their choices mattered more than they did. I liked the repetition. The sound of soles tapping across linoleum was cleaner than the noise at home. More ordered than the chaos of the old neighborhood. Predictable. Controllable. I learned the rhythm of sales. Eye contact at just the right moment. Small talk that felt personal but revealed nothing. Mirroring the customer's posture and pace. You give people what they think they want to see, And they give you what you really want. Their trust, their money, their belief that you're on their side, that you understand them, that you're different from all the other salesmen who just want to make commission. There was power in that. Not the kind that leaves bruises, not the loud power of the strap or the desperate power of Ma's prayers. The quieter kind. The kind you can carry in your pocket like loose change. Spend when the moment's right. Invest when the return looks promising. I was good at it. Better than good. Within 3 months, I was outselling everyone except Doyle himself, and he'd been there 15 years. Customers asked for me by name. "Is John working today?" They'd say at the door, like I was some kind of specialist, like their feat required my specific expertise. Mr. Greenberg, the district manager, noticed, pulled me aside after a particularly good week, coffee breath and cheap cologne, put his hand on my shoulder like we were conspirators. "You got something, kid. Natural talent. Keep it up, and you'll go places. Ambitious places." I liked the sound of that. Anywhere was better than the South Side. Better than the strap and the migraines and the dog under the lilacs. Places meant possibility. Meant escape without running. Meant becoming instead of just surviving. Chapter 2. The Manager's Lesson. His name was Mr. Doyle. Richard Doyle. But everyone called him Mr. Doyle. Even the old-timers who'd worked there since before the war. Thick glasses that magnified his eyes into something fish-like. Hair slicked back with too much pomade. It smelled like medicine and vanity. He wore his authority like an old coat, frayed at the edges, but still warm enough to keep out the cold. He taught me the real trick. The secret nobody talks about in sales training or business school. You don't sell shoes. You sell comfort. People come in with their pain. Bunions, fallen arches, feet that hurt from standing all day at jobs they hate. And you offer them something to stand on. Something that makes the burden lighter. Makes the day more bearable. Makes them feel like maybe someone understands. He said it like scripture, like he was passing down ancient wisdom. I believed him. Not because I thought he was right about comfort, but because I recognized the principle. People will pay for the illusion of relief, for the story that makes their suffering make sense, for the promise that someone, somewhere, gives a damn about their pain. But there was something else in his eyes. Something that watched me the way the man in the truck once had. Evaluating, measuring, calculating what I was worth, what I could be used for, what I might cost or earn. And I felt it again. That mix of fear and flattery. The feeling of being seen and not quite safe. The understanding that attention always comes with a price. When he leaned in close to correct my tie one afternoon, his breath smelled of tobacco, and wintergreen mints he sucked to cover the tobacco. The same smell my father had when he came home from his shift. When he said discipline builds character. When his hand reached for the strap. I didn't flinch this time. I smiled, thanked him for the guidance. Let him think I was grateful, eager, moldable. I wanted him to believe I understood, that I could learn, that I was worth investing in, that his attention was a gift instead of a transaction. I did understand, just not the way he thought. I understood that Doyle liked young men who were grateful, who looked up to him, who made him feel important, authoritative, paternal. And I understood that making someone feel important is the first step in controlling them. Because once they need you to reflect their importance back at them, they'll do almost anything to keep that mirror polished. Doyle started keeping me after closing sometimes. Training, he called it. Teaching me inventory management, ordering procedures, how to handle difficult customers and sticky situations. But mostly we'd just smoke in the back office. Him talking about the old days, about how the business had changed, about how young people today didn't understand the value of hard work and loyalty. I'd nod, agree, ask the right questions, make him feel wise, make him feel heard. Build the ledger of small debts and minor obligations that would eventually add up to something useful. That's what the strap and the migraines had taught me. Patience. Long games pay better than short ones. Invest in people's need for validation, and they'll hand you the keys to everything. Chapter 3. The smoke breaks. The shoe store had a back alley where the clerks took their breaks. Crates stacked against brick walls, dented metal ashtrays overflowing with butts. A tin door that squealed like confession every time it opened. That's where I learned the second trade. Conversation. The art of making people comfortable enough to reveal themselves, vulnerable enough to trust, invested enough to depend. Cigarettes made talk easier, broke down the walls people built between their public face and their private thoughts. You offer someone a smoke, you create a moment of shared ritual, of brief communion. And in that moment, people loosen their grip on their own stories. Start letting things slip. Start saying the things they wouldn't say across the sales floor or at the dinner table. There was power in letting others fill the silence. I'd nod, add a word here and there, ask a follow-up question that seemed casual but was carefully calculated. And I'd watch them spill themselves out like spilled polish on the floor. Messy, revealing, impossible to fully clean up. People want to be heard more than they want to be understood. Once you figure that out, you can steer them anywhere. Give them the illusion of a sympathetic ear, and they'll hand you ammunition without ever realizing what they're doing. Jerry from the stockroom was cheating on his wife with a waitress at the diner on Clark Street. Tommy from sales had a gambling problem, owed money to the wrong people. Patricia from accounting was stealing quarters from the register. Not much, just enough to feed the parking meters and buy herself lunch without asking her husband for money. I learned all of this in that alley. Smoke curling between us like secrets taking physical form. And I filed it all away in the organized rooms of my mind. The ledger I'd been keeping since the rosary days. Everyone's got debts. Everyone's got secrets. Everyone's got leverage, if you know where to look. Observational. I started carrying Lucky Strikes, my father's brand. It made the mimicry easier, added another layer to the mask. I even practiced his tone, short, clipped, certain. The voice of authority without the violence behind it. Only I used it differently. Not to break people, to bend them, to make them think I was on their side, while I was really just mapping their weaknesses. Some nights I'd stand in that alley alone after everyone had gone home, smoking, watching the city lights blink on like eyes opening in the dark, and I'd feel it. That same hum from the migraine days, but cleaner now, more focused. Not pain, but signal. Not suffering, but purpose. The boy who buried the dog was learning to bury bigger things. Not in dirt, but in conversation, in trust, in the space between what people said and what they meant. Chapter 4. The party. Mr. Doyle invited me to a staff party at his apartment in January of '62. The city was buried in snow, gray, heavy, dead quiet in the way only Chicago winter can be. Everything muffled, everything slowed, everything waiting for spring like a held breath. Observational. His place was in Uptown, a third-floor walk-up that smelled of gin and stale smoke and the ghost of dinners cooked days ago. The furniture was tired, the carpet worn thin, the walls decorated with framed photographs of Doyle shaking hands with people who were probably important once. The party was small. A dozen people from the store and their spouses or dates, crammed into a living room that felt smaller with every drink poured. The women laughed too loud, compensating for jokes that weren't funny. The men bragged too much, competing for status that didn't exist. Everyone performing for everyone else. All of us pretending this mattered, that we were important, that our little shoe store lives added up to something significant. I stayed in the corner for a while, nursing a beer I didn't want, polishing my smile, practicing my nods, watching, learning, cataloging who drank too much, who laughed at whose jokes, who stood too close to whose wife, who was performing, and who was just present. At some point, Doyle pulled me aside. 3 drinks in, his eyes swimming behind those thick glasses, his breath thick with gin and cigarettes and something desperate. Said I had promise. Said he saw something in me. Leadership potential, management material, the stuff that separates the career men from the clock punchers. His hand on my shoulder lingered a second too long. Heavy, possessive, claiming. Like I was property he was evaluating, investment he was considering, territory he was marking. He poured another drink, whiskey this time. Cheap stuff that burned going down, and told me success was all about confidence, about taking what you want before someone else does, about understanding that the world doesn't reward hesitation or humility, that nice guys finish last, that you gotta grab opportunity by the throat and squeeze until it gives you what you need. You understand that, don't you, John? He said, eyes boring into mine, looking for something. Agreement, validation, complicity. Yes, sir, I said. I understand perfectly. 2000, treating, trusting list, pushing on relationship on you worst. This is fun. I needed to start, so I have no working. To still you haven't dated, and well to the breath. She says with another of money. She turned online. She was a greatest. She said with funny ways with money. 2000. I said, 2000. I said that. She said the Mr. Reasons was a clearly, as she said Temda with funny ways with money. She was indated in the secondary of the funtism can be flowsed with water they did. She was indebted in the arth and tenonation. She said my heart. he said the termins by the other. Unions. I said, I understand perfectly. Yes, sir, I said, I understand perfectly. 2000. I understand perfectly. Perfectly. I said my heart. This is fun. I understand perfectly. I said with funny ways with money. She said the self was money. This is funny ways was money. She said with a greatest in terranaria. She said with another of money. And I did. I understood that Doyle was drunk and lonely and pathetic, that he needed me to make him feel important, wise, paternal, that his hand on my shoulder was part warning and part invitation, that he was testing me, trying to figure out if I was someone who could be used, or someone who would use. When I left that night, snow falling soft and constant, I took his lighter, silver, engraved with his initials, R.D. in cursive script that tried too hard to be elegant. It was sitting on the coffee table, next to an ashtray full of butts and a glass with lipstick on the rim. I still don't know why I took it. Maybe because I wanted proof that I could take something without asking, without permission, without consequence. Maybe because it felt like the beginning of ownership, of understanding that the world was full of things that belonged to other people until you decided they were yours. Maybe because the lighter was small and silver and fit perfectly in my palm, and holding it made me feel powerful in a way the strap never had. Or maybe I took it because I could, because Doyle would notice it was gone and wonder, and that wondering would make him uncomfortable, and that discomfort would shift the balance between us in ways he wouldn't fully understand. Power isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's just a stolen lighter in your pocket, a small secret you carry that changes how you see the world. Chapter 5. The Girl from Accounting. Her name was Nancy. Nancy Kellerman. Blonde hair, always pinned up neat. Careful smile that showed just enough teeth to be friendly without being forward. Always smelling like lilac powder and something else underneath. Something clean and innocent and trusting that made you want to either protect her or destroy her, depending on what kind of person you were. She liked how polite I was. Said I was different from the others, by which she meant different from Jerry with his wandering hands, and Tommy with his crude jokes, and the other men who treated women like obstacles or opportunities instead of people. I played into that, made sure I was extra courteous, extra respectful, held doors, remembered details, asked about her day in a way that suggested I actually cared, built the image of the nice guy, the gentleman, the safe choice in a world of wolves. We started taking lunch together. The drugstore counter on Madison. Coffee and sandwiches, nothing fancy, nothing that looked like a date. Just two co-workers being friendly, keeping each other company during the 45 minutes between morning and afternoon shifts. I let her talk. About her mother who was sick but wouldn't admit it. About her cat that knocked over plants and shredded curtains. About her dreams of moving somewhere warm. Arizona, maybe. Or California. Somewhere the winters didn't hurt your face. And summer wasn't just 3 weeks in July. I memorized every word. Filed it all away in the organized rooms of my mind. The system the migraines had built and the strap had reinforced. Every detail was potential leverage. Every confession was ammunition. Every moment of trust was an investment that would eventually pay dividends. One afternoon in late March, spring trying to push through the last of winter's grip, she said something that changed the equation. We were splitting a slice of apple pie, her fork crossing into my half without asking. Comfortable enough now to assume permission. "You really listen," she said, looking at me with those clear blue eyes that hadn't learned yet to be suspicious. Most men just wait for their turn to talk. "But you actually hear what I'm saying?" I smiled and said, "That's my secret." It was true, but not in the way she thought. Attention is a mirror. People stare into it and fall in love with their own reflection. They see themselves as interesting, as worthy of time and focus and care. And they credit you for showing them that image, never understanding that you're just reflecting back what they want to see. Nancy started looking for me in the mornings, saving me a seat at lunch, asking if I had plans on the weekends. Not pushing, not demanding, just present, available, interested. I could have played it different ways. Could have pursued her properly, courted her, married her maybe. She was the kind of girl Ma would approve of, the kind fathers shake hands over, the kind that completes the picture of normalcy and respectability. But there was a problem. Something I was still figuring out about myself. Something that didn't quite fit the story I was supposed to be living. Something that made me more interested in the control than the outcome, more drawn to the power of withholding than the satisfaction of having. Nancy wanted romance. I wanted dominance. She wanted to be loved. I wanted to be necessary. Two different hungers that looked the same from the outside, but fed entirely different needs. Chapter 6. The death of the manager. It happened suddenly. April 14th, 1962. A Tuesday. Inventory day. The store quiet except for the scratch of pencils and the rustle of tissue paper. Doyle's heart gave out behind the counter one afternoon. Mid-sale. Shoehorn in one hand and a wingtip Oxford in the other. One moment he was breathing, talking, existing. The next he was just meat that used to be a person, collapsing like all the air went out of him at once. They said it was stress. Bad heart, bad habits, bad luck. The kind of thing that happens to men who smoke too much and drink too much and carry too much weight, physical and otherwise. Nobody questioned it. Nobody thought twice. Just another middle-aged man who pushed too hard and paid the price. I said nothing. Did nothing except call the ambulance, clear the customers out. Put the close sign in the window. Professional. Concerned. Appropriate. The EMTs came. Tried to revive him. Failed. Loaded him onto a gurney with practiced efficiency. The kind of efficiency that comes from doing the same thing over and over until death becomes routine, becomes paperwork, becomes just another Tuesday in Chicago. Management needed someone to fill his position until corporate sent a replacement. Someone who knew the store, knew the customers, knew the procedures. Someone trusted, competent, ready. I volunteered. Of course I volunteered, standing behind that counter, in his spot, with his keys in my pocket, and his lighter keeping mine company. I felt something shift, like a lock tumbling open. like a door swinging wide, like permission being granted from nowhere and everywhere at once. The customers still smiled. The clerks still joked. But now they looked up when I spoke. Their eyes waited for my approval, sought my opinion, deferred to my judgment. That was the first real taste, the clean kind of control, the kind that came from performance, not punishment, from position, not violence, from being necessary instead of feared. It felt right, like putting on a suit that was made for you, like stepping into shoes that fit perfectly, even though they belonged to someone else first. Natural, inevitable, deserved. I kept his lighter in my pocket that day. When I flicked it open, the flame danced steady, refusing to be bothered by the draft from the door or the movement around it. I remember thinking how easy it was to replace someone, to fill a space and make everyone believe it was always meant for you, to take what was his and make it mine, without anyone noticing the theft. The store ran smoother under my management. Sales went up. Complaints went down. Corporate noticed, sent congratulations, made the promotion permanent within 3 months. Mr. Greenberg shook my hand, told me I was a natural, said Doyle would be proud. I smiled and thanked him, and thought about the lighter in my pocket, the weight of silver and stolen authority, the proof that anything could be mine if I wanted it badly enough, and played the game right. Chapter 7. The Whisper of Tomorrow. The headaches came back that spring. Softer now, more like static than pain. Not the blinding agony of childhood, but a gentle reminder that the organized rooms of my mind were still there, still functional, still mapping the world in ways other people couldn't understand. A reminder of order humming under the surface. Observational. Nancy said I worked too much. Worried about me in that gentle, persistent way that was supposed to be caring, but felt more like invasion. Kept asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted to talk about what happened with Doyle. I'm fine, I told her. Just focused on doing right by the store. Doyle would have wanted that. She nodded, believed me, kept bringing me coffee and concern in equal measures. Ma said she was proud, called me on Sundays, told the neighbors about my promotion, bragged to the women at church about her successful son, the boy who'd taken the strap and made something of himself. The boy who'd proven the old man wrong. The old man said nothing at all. When I visited for Ma's birthday, he sat in his chair reading his paper, pretending I wasn't there. That silence meant victory. Meant I'd escaped his reach, exceeded his grasp, become something he couldn't comprehend or control. The lighter still burns. The suit still fits. And when I shake a man's hand now, I watch his eyes for that flicker, that tiny moment when trust and fear trade places, when respect and suspicion blur together, when they see me without quite understanding what they're looking at. They think I'm just learning business, just moving up in the world. Just another young man with ambition and polish, suit and smile, future bright as new leather. But I'm learning something else. Something older. Something that hums beneath the skin of every smile and lurks behind every handshake. something the strap taught me, and the migraines refined, and the dog confirmed, and Doyle's death proved. Power isn't given, it's taken. Order isn't natural, it's imposed. And control doesn't come from asking permission. It comes from making people believe you already have it. Nancy kept asking about weekends, about plans, about future. Her questions getting more pointed, more persistent, more invested. Building towards something I could see coming, but she couldn't. Next time, I'll write about the day Nancy stopped coming to work, and what I found when I went looking, and why sometimes the only solution to a problem is making sure it stops being a problem. The headache hums approval. The lighter flickers agreement. The suit holds its shape. Everything is in its place. Everyone serves their purpose. Order maintains itself through whatever adjustments become necessary. Order remains. And Nancy is learning what it means to be necessary. End of entry 5.
In a city that never sleeps, where every light hides a story, and every night whispers, "What if?" one man turns the impossible into your next experience. Mitchie Sander, the name behind Vegas's most exclusive nights, private villas, secret shows, tables no one else can book. From the Strip to the sky, your access begins here. You don't wait in lines. You walk through velvet ropes. Because in Mitchie's world, the world waits for you. Discover the art of living at mitchiesander.com. Vegas, done the way it was meant to be.
Entry 6. Wedding Bands and Secrets. Chicago, Illinois, 1963 to 1964. My name is John Wayne Gacy. This is my diary, written in silence, hidden beneath the wedding invitations and the polite smiles of a man learning to act the part. Tucked between receipts from the florist and congratulation cards from people who believed they knew me. Sealed away in the space between what I showed the world and what the world refused to see. And yet, somehow, it found its way here. Pulled from hiding places that kept darker secrets than a young marriage should hold. Where truth never sleeps, and every vow leaves a stain that won't wash out, no matter how much you scrub. Tonight I write about promises. Rings and ribbons, lies and vows. The kind of love people talk about in church but never live at home. The kind of marriage that looks perfect in photographs but feels like wearing someone else's skin. These pages hold the weight of my wedding band, and the first secret I buried to keep it shining. Marriage was supposed to fix me. That's what Ma said, what the priests implied, what society demanded. Get married, settle down, become a man, start a family. The natural progression, the expected path, the cure for whatever was wrong with boys like me who didn't quite fit the mold. But marriage didn't fix anything. It just gave me better cover, a prettier mask, a more convincing performance. And beneath that performance, in the basement of our little house with its faded green trim and its damp walls that absorbed sound like confession, something else was growing. Something that couldn't be fixed with vows or rings, or the smell of her perfume on the pillows. So lean in and listen. Every word smells faintly of cologne, blood, and bridal cake. Every sentence carries the weight of promises made and broken, of normalcy performed and horror concealed, of the distance between the man people saw and the thing living in his basement. This is the story of how I became a husband, and how that husband learned to bury more than just his secrets. Chapter 1. The Proposal. It was the winter of '63 when I asked Marlon Myers to marry me. December, 2 weeks before Christmas, snow turning Chicago into something almost clean, almost innocent. We were at her parents' house in Rogers Park, the Christmas tree blinking its colored lights like a slow heartbeat, her mother's pot roast cooling on the dining room table. I'd been dating Marlon for 8 months by then. Met her through the JCs. She was the daughter of a successful contractor. Exactly the kind of connection a young man with ambition should cultivate. Pretty in that wholesome Midwest way. Blonde hair, blue eyes, smile that believed in goodness because she'd never seen much else. Snow on the pavement outside, cheap champagne and borrowed crystal. Me in my best suit, kneeling on her parents' carpet, with a ring that cost 3 weeks' salary, but looked like more. She cried, said I was kind, gentle, nothing like her father, who drank too much and spoke too loud. I smiled. I knew how to be what people needed. The strap had taught me that. The migraines had refined it. Years of performance had perfected it. Her mother hugged me like a son she'd always wanted, instead of the daughter she got. Her father shook my hand, firm grip, looking me in the eye, measuring me the way men do, and said, "You're a good boy, John. You'll take care of her." "Yes, sir," I said. "That's all I want to do." I almost believed him when he called me good. Almost believed myself when I promised to take care of her. Because in that moment, with her crying happy tears and her mother beaming and her father nodding approval, I felt like maybe I could be normal. Maybe the suit and the smile and the ring could make me into the man I was pretending to be. The ring wasn't much. 1 carat. Modest but shiny enough to catch light in every photograph. I remember watching it glitter as she turned her hand, showing her mother, showing her friends later. That diamond catching every angle of light and throwing it back brighter. Thinking, objects can hold power if you give them story. That was the moment I understood marriage wasn't about love. It was about performance. About showing the world you've achieved a milestone. Checked a box. Become what you're supposed to become. Love was just the marketing. Marriage was the product. And I was selling it like I'd learned to sell shoes. With confidence. With charm. With the absolute certainty that the customer was buying the story, not the merchandise. We set the date for June. 6 months to plan the wedding, to build the narrative, to practice being the man Marlon thought she was marrying. 6 months to convince myself this could work, that normal was something you could achieve through repetition and will, and keeping certain truths locked in the organized rooms of your mind. Chapter 2. The House. We moved into a narrow brick house near Norwood Park in July of '63, right after the honeymoon in Niagara Falls, where we took pictures in front of the water, and I held her hand and smiled until my face hurt. 1 story, faded green trim, a basement that smelled like damp dust and old motor oil, and something else underneath that I couldn't quite name. something waiting, the kind of place where secrets could breathe without witnesses, where the neighbors were close enough to wave at, but far enough not to hear, where a young couple could build their lives without too much scrutiny, too much attention, too much light shining into the corners. Observational. Marlin filled it with laughter. Curtains she sewed herself. Pastel walls she painted on weekends while humming along to the radio. She nested, they call it. Made the house into a home. Turned empty rooms into spaces that meant something. Living room, bedroom, kitchen. Everything labeled, everything organized. Everything in its proper place. I filled it with schedules, routines, and silence. Every morning I left in pressed suits, hair slicked back with the same pomade Mr. Doyle used to use, pockets filled with cigarettes and ambition and the weight of performance. The neighbors said we were perfect. Young couple, good jobs, nice house, bright future. They were right, in the way mannequins are perfect. All surface, no substance. All appearance, no truth. At night, when she asked if I was happy, I kissed her forehead and said, "Of course, sweetheart." That word, sweetheart, became my shield. It meant nothing and everything at once. A term of endearment that created distance even as it suggested intimacy. A way of acknowledging her without really seeing her. A performance of affection that required no actual feeling. She'd smile satisfied and curl against me in bed. And I'd lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of the ring on my finger like a shackle I'd willingly locked. Thinking about the basement, about the space beneath the house where no one went, where tools hung on pegboards in neat rows, where the concrete floor was cool and permanent and patient. The basement felt more honest than the bedroom, more true than the living room with its pastel walls and framed wedding photos. Down there, in the dark, with the smell of damp and dust, I didn't have to perform, didn't have to smile, didn't have to be the husband, the neighbor, the good boy John, who'd made something of himself. Down there, I could just be. Chapter 3. The Cracks. The first year was easy. People like newlyweds. They forgive distance if it's wrapped in politeness. Excuse absence if it's explained by work. Accept silence if it's punctuated by occasional affection. We were the success story. South Side boy made good. Married the contractor's daughter. Building a future brick by brick. Smile by smile. But by 64, the cracks started showing. Not to anyone else. To them, we were still perfect. But to me, and maybe to Marlene, though she never said it out loud, the performance was getting harder to maintain. Observational. She wanted children. I wanted quiet. She wanted closeness, emotionally, physically, the kind of intimacy that requires vulnerability and trust and genuine connection. I wanted space, distance, the freedom to retreat into the organized rooms of my mind where she couldn't follow. Calculating. I gave her flowers instead. Roses with thorns clipped off, bought from the florist on Madison every Friday like clockwork. Red for passion I didn't feel, wrapped in paper that hid the stems, presented with a smile that suggested thoughtfulness instead of obligation. Appearances intact. The headaches returned, sharper this time. Not the childhood migraines that blinded and disoriented, but focused pain, targeted. A signal, not a symptom. I told her it was stress from work. I'd been promoted again. More responsibility, more pressure, more hours. She prayed over me, hands on my temples like Ma used to do, whispering that God would ease my burden. I said, "He already has." She smiled, not understanding the joke, not understanding that the burden was her, was the marriage, was the constant performance of normalcy when nothing about me was normal. The bedroom became a battlefield. Not loud, not violent, but tense with unspoken expectations and unmet needs. She wanted a husband who desired her. I wanted a roommate who asked fewer questions. We compromised by not talking about it, by letting silence fill the space where honesty should have lived. I started spending more time in the basement. Projects, I called them. Organizing tools, building shelves, fixing things that weren't broken. She'd call down the stairs, "Dinner's ready," or "Phone for you," or "Coming to bed." And I'd answer but not move. Not yet. 5 more minutes. 10. An hour. Down there, I could breathe, could think, could be the thing I was becoming, without pretending to be the thing I wasn't. Chapter 4. The Man from the Club. It was at a business social in March of '64. JC's mixer at the Sherman House Hotel, downtown where the real city lived. Smoke thick enough to chew, bourbon sweating in crystal glasses. Men in suits talking about money and opportunity and the future of Chicago, like they had any control over it. He was older, maybe 40, 45. A distributor named Harris, first name Carl or maybe Carl, I don't remember now. Wore his confidence like cologne, expensive and obvious. Sold industrial supplies, had connections, knew people, understood how business really worked. We talked about sales, supply chains, the city's politics, the kind of conversation men have at these things, proving they're serious, that they understand, that they belong. But then, later, after the third drink, when the crowd had thinned and the conversation had loosened, we talked about other things. Things men didn't speak about out loud in 1964. Things that lived in the spaces between words, in glances that lasted too long, in casual touches that weren't quite casual. Pause. His eyes lingered. Mine didn't move away. We ended up in his car. A Lincoln. Black. Leather seats that smelled like money and cigarettes. Parked in a lot near the lake where the wind cut through metal and glass but couldn't reach inside. And there, in the dark, with the city lights reflecting off the water and the heater humming and his hand on my knee, I understood something I'd been running from since the man in the truck. This was what I was. Not what I pretended to be with Marlene. Not what I showed the neighbors and the JCs and Ma. This hunger, this need, this truth that couldn't be spoken or acknowledged or accepted in 1964 Chicago, where men married women and raised families and kept their secrets buried deeper than bodies. Afterward, I walked home through slush, hands shaking in my pockets. The guilt wasn't from what happened. It was from how natural it felt, how right the wrongness was, and how much I wanted more. Marlin asked why I was late. I told her traffic was bad, meeting ran long, stopped for a drink with clients. She kissed me goodnight, soft and trusting, and I tasted his cigarettes on my own breath and wondered if she could tell. Wondered if somewhere deep in her trusting Midwest soul, she knew she'd married a lie. I stared at the ceiling and felt something break. Not guilt, not shame. Something colder. A part of me that had once believed I could be normal. That marriage could fix me. That performance could become reality. That wanting to be good was the same as being good. That part died that night, and what was left was clearer, sharper, more honest in its dishonesty. I couldn't be what they wanted, but I could pretend so well they'd never know the difference. And in the basement, where secrets breathed and concrete absorbed sound, I could be what I really was. Chapter 5. The Disappearance. He was a clerk, a young man from the club, maybe 19, 20 at most. Name was Timothy something. Irish last name I never bothered to remember. Always smiling, always eager, always volunteering for errands and extra shifts, like enthusiasm could make up for lack of experience. Reminded me too much of myself at that age. That desperate need to please, to be useful, to earn approval from men who didn't really care. That willingness to trust anyone who showed the slightest bit of attention. One night in late May, he stopped by to drop off some paperwork after hours. Invoices that couldn't wait. Contracts that needed signing. Some excuse that got him to my door at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, when decent people were home with their families. The house was quiet. Marlin was visiting her parents in Rogers Park, spending the night because her mother was sick and needed help. I was alone. Really alone. For the first time in weeks. "Come in," I said. "Just for a minute. I'll look at these, sign what needs signing." He followed me inside, talking too fast, laughing too loud. Nervous energy that reminded me of rabbits I'd seen as a kid, all twitchy and alert right before the hawk dropped. He'd brought coffee, 2 cups from the diner on the corner, still hot. A gesture of thoughtfulness that made him seem younger than he was. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "I wanted to," he said, and the way he looked at me, hopeful, admiring, hungry for approval. I knew what he wanted, knew what he saw in me, knew that somewhere in his 19-year-old understanding of the world, he thought I was safe, thought I understood, thought maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone. "The paperwork's in the basement," I lied, "on my workbench. Come on down, I'll show you." The basement light flickered when I flipped the switch. Old wiring, needed fixing. One more project on the endless list. He followed me down, still talking. Something about his plans for the future. About how he wanted to move up in the company. About how much he admired my success. Something inside me clenched. A tension that had been building since that night with Harris. Since the realization that I couldn't be what Marlin needed, what society expected, what Ma prayed for. A pressure that needed release, needed outlet, needed resolution. The migraine started, hard and hot, flashing white behind my eyes. Not pain anymore. Signal. Permission. The frequency that told me a problem required adjustment. That order needed restoration. That some solutions were permanent. Then silence. Then stillness. Then breath. Only one of us still had it. I remember the hum afterward. The same one from my childhood headaches. From the dog under the lilacs. From the moments when chaos resolved into order. The sound of everything settling into its proper place. The peace of a problem solved permanently. I cleaned, wrapped, buried. Calm, methodical, precise. The same attention to detail I brought to sales, to inventory, to every aspect of the performance. The concrete floor in the back corner of the basement was loose anyway. Had been since we moved in. Easy to pull up, dig down, replace. By 3 a.m., the basement looked exactly as it had before. Tools on their pegboards, workbench clean, floor swept. Nothing out of place. Nothing disturbed. I slept better that night than I had in years. No headache. No hum. Just quiet. Perfect, absolute quiet. Chapter 6. The smile at breakfast. Marlin came home the next morning. Arms full of groceries from the market on Milwaukee Avenue. Cheeks red from the cold that was unseasonable for late May. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You look rested." I told her I was. I meant it. "You've been working in the basement?" she asked, noticing dust on my pants. "Just organizing," I said. Finally got those shelves sorted like I'd been meaning to. Observational. She smiled, proud of my industriousness, my attention to home improvement, my dedication to making our house better. "You work so hard," she said. "At the store, here at home. You never stop." "That's what good husbands do," I told her, and kissed her forehead. The paper on the table had a headline about a missing boy. Timothy's face grainy in black and white newsprint. Description of when he was last seen. Plea from his mother for anyone with information to call the police. She frowned, said, "Such a shame. That poor mother." I nodded, took another sip of coffee. The steam fogged my glasses and hid my eyes just long enough for me to smile. These things happen. City's dangerous. Kids don't realize. "Still," she said, "to just disappear like that. No one knows anything." "Someone always knows," I said. "They just don't say." She looked at me oddly for a second, like maybe she heard something underneath the words. But then the moment passed, and she went back to putting groceries away, humming along to the radio, secure in the knowledge that her husband was safe, trustworthy, incapable of darkness. No one noticed. They never do. People see what they need to. They see the ring, the tie, the neat hair, the easy grin. They see the suit, never the skin beneath. Never the basement where order gets maintained through whatever adjustments become necessary. The police came by eventually. Routine questions. Timothy had been seen in the neighborhood. Had he stopped by? Did I know anything? He dropped off some paperwork, I said. Around 9, maybe 9:30. Didn't stay long. 5-10 minutes. Seemed fine when he left. They wrote it down, nodded, moved on. Case went cold within 3 months. Just another runaway. Another kid who couldn't handle life and decided to become someone else's problem. Chicago swallows people. Nobody looks too hard. Because looking means seeing. And seeing means responsibility. Chapter 7. The ring tightens. By summer, the headaches were gone. The hum was steady now, constant. Not pain, not warning. A rhythm. A heartbeat. The sound of order maintained, of problems solved, of a system that worked as long as you followed the rules. Marlin said we should renew our vows in church for our first anniversary. Make it official with God as well as the state. Strengthen our commitment. Publicly reaffirm what we'd promised each other. I said we already did. Every morning, when she put my coffee beside the paper and smiled like everything made sense. She said I was a good man. The best man she knew. I kissed her hand. I didn't argue. What was the point? She believed what she needed to believe, saw what she needed to see. The performance was working. The mask held. At night, I'd sit at the window, smoke curling through the room, watching the streetlights flicker. Marlin asleep upstairs, trusting, innocent, secure in her belief that she knew her husband. And beneath me, in the basement, beneath the floorboards and the concrete, beneath the tools and the workbench and the careful order, something waited. Not guilt, not shame. Just proof. Proof that I could solve problems permanently. That order could be maintained through decisive action. That the world would look away as long as you gave them something pretty to look at instead. Beneath the hum, beneath the calm, I could still feel the pull. A whisper from the basement, soft but certain, telling me that this was just the beginning. That the house wasn't just shelter, wasn't just performance space. It was laboratory, workshop, sacred ground where the boy who'd learned from the strap and the rosary and the migraines could practice what he'd learned. Marriage hadn't fixed me, but it had given me cover, legitimacy, access, a perfect normal life that no one would question, because questioning meant doubting. And people don't want to doubt the nice young man who always smiles and helps his neighbors and loves his wife. Next time I'll write about Waterloo, about the move, about leaving Chicago for Iowa and starting fresh in a place where nobody knew the basement's secrets. About the first time I realized the basement wasn't just a place to hide things. It was a place to build something. A system. A method. A way of maintaining order in a chaotic world. About how a good husband becomes a better businessman. And how basement floors in Iowa are just as accommodating as basement floors in Chicago. Order remains. Waterloo awaits. End of Entry 6. Entry 7. Shadows in Waterloo. Waterloo, Iowa. 1965 to 1966. My name is John Wayne Gacy. This diary was never meant for eyes other than my own. Written in basements and locked rooms, hidden between false bottoms and forgotten spaces, meant to die with me, or burn before anyone could read what a man really thinks when he stops pretending. And yet it sits now among the forbidden tomes of places that shouldn't exist, where every book breathes, where every secret refuses to stay buried, no matter how deep you dig. This one is about Waterloo, about the town that promised redemption and delivered something else entirely. A new job managing the Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises, 3 of them. My name on the paperwork, my picture in the local paper shaking hands with the district manager. A new life with Marlon, who believed Iowa would fix whatever was broken in our marriage. A new basement that understood what basements are really for. Chicago had taught me the fundamentals. The strap, the rosary, the migraines that became signals, the dog under the lilacs, the man in the truck, the suits and smoke and stolen lighters. Chicago made me. But Waterloo refined me, turned theory into practice, turned impulse into system, turned the boy who'd learned to survive into the man who'd learned to thrive. You can't start over when your shadows know how to follow you. You can only learn to hide them better. Learn to integrate them into the performance. Make them part of the act instead of evidence of failure. Turn darkness into foundation instead of flaw. Iowa was supposed to be clean. Wide streets, church on Sundays. Neighbors who waved and minded their business. The kind of place where a young couple could build something real, something lasting, something normal. Marlon believed that. Believed geography could cure what Chicago had broken. That distance from the South Side meant distance from whatever made me different. She was wrong. But I let her believe. Belief kept her smiling, kept her asking fewer questions, kept her upstairs while I worked downstairs on projects she didn't need to understand. This entry covers the years I learned that basements aren't just spaces beneath houses. They're opportunities, laboratories, sacred ground, where the organized rooms of my mind could manifest in concrete and drainage and soundproofed silence. Let me show you how Waterloo taught me to stop fighting what I was and start perfecting it instead. Chapter 1. The Arrival. We arrived in Iowa in the spring of 1965, with suitcases that smelled of Chicago rain and mothballs. Everything we owned packed into a U-Haul truck. I drove 12 hours through flat landscape that never changed. Marlon called it a blessing, a fresh chapter, a chance to start over. I called it quiet, the kind of quiet that makes noise stand out, makes secrets harder to keep, unless you're careful. The streets were wide enough to turn a truck around, the air heavy with grain dust and diesel fuel, and something else. Possibility, maybe, or just absence. The kind of town where nobody asks questions, unless you skip church or let your lawn get too high. Where respectability is measured in attendance and appearance. Where fitting in means disappearing into the pattern. Perfect. Our rented house was white with blue shutters. Plain. Forgettable. Exactly like the 6 houses on either side of it. 2 bedrooms, a fenced yard with grass that needed mowing, and a basement that ran cool even in July. The landlord, older man, suspenders and work boots, hands like leather, showed us around, pointing out features like he was selling something we hadn't already agreed to rent. "Basement's got good drainage," he said, pointing to the floor drain in the center. Cedar Rapids flooded back in '61, but this house stayed dry. That drain there, that's your insurance. I smiled and told him I understood. Drains always have more than one purpose. Always have been more than one purpose, really, if you think about it properly. Infrastructure built for one function, available for others. Marlon filled the place with color immediately. Curtains she'd sewn during the drive, flowers and vases bought at the 5 and dime. Her laughter echoing through empty rooms as she unpacked boxes and made plans. She nested, same as she had in Chicago, turning blank space into home through sheer force of optimism. I filled it with something else. Plans, order, silence. She thought I was learning to settle down, to embrace domesticity, to become the husband she'd married instead of the stranger who'd been occupying his body. I was learning how to contain myself, how to separate the performance from the truth, keep them in different rooms, make sure they never met in public. The basement became mine within a week. She'd come down once, wrinkled her nose at the smell. Damp concrete, old paint, something musty, and said, "You sure you want to spend time down here?" "It's perfect," I told her. "Just needs organization. Give me a month. I'll have it looking like a workshop." She smiled, relieved, went back upstairs to her curtains and her kitchen. And I stood in that space, feeling it, understanding it. Concrete floor, low ceiling that made tall men stoop. One bare bulb that flickered like a dying heart. Down there, the headaches quieted. The ringing behind my eyes faded into something like clarity. Peace always demands a price. I was beginning to understand how to pay it. Chapter 2. The JCs. Waterloo had a chapter of the Junior Chamber of Commerce. Same organization I'd joined in Chicago. Same principles, different faces. Young businessmen, community leaders, men with ambition and secrets wrapped in aftershave and handshakes. I joined the second week we were in town, before I'd even started the KFC job. Priorities. They liked me immediately. Said I was sharp, dependable, organized. The kind of man who'd go places. I wore suits that fit just right now. Had my pitch perfected. Knew how to make men feel seen and heard and important. They called me Johnny the Organizer after I volunteered to chair the annual fundraiser committee. I took that as prophecy, as permission, as proof I was becoming what I needed to be. We met in church basements, VFW halls, and bars with names like the Silver Spur and Danny's Place. Planned charity events by day, pancake breakfasts, car washes, Christmas toy drives, and chased sins by night. Drinks, cards, conversations that got looser as the bottles emptied. I learned fast that every community has its confessions. They just call them different things. Fundraisers, planning sessions, boys' nights out. One of the JCs, Bill Henderson, insurance salesman with a wife he complained about and kids he never mentioned, liked to drink until his words came loose. Told me one night, 3 bourbons deep, You can get away with anything if you do it with confidence, Johnny. That's what leadership is. Making people believe you belong wherever you stand. I laughed then, raised my glass, played it off as bar wisdom. Later, driving home through empty streets with that observation rattling in my head, I realized he wasn't wrong. Confidence is permission. Authority is performance. And if you can make people believe you're supposed to be somewhere, doing something, they'll never question why. The men trusted me. I poured drinks, listened more than I spoke, made them feel heard, remembered their wives' names, their kids' ages, their complaints about work, filed it all in the organized rooms of my mind, the ledger system refined over years of practice. Every detail was leverage. Every confidence was ammunition. Every moment of trust was investment in future transactions. That's how it starts. The same trick I'd learned from the man in the truck years before, refined through sales and marriage and performance. Power wears a friendly face, and silence makes it irresistible. People trust quiet men who listen, who nod, who don't compete for attention. They mistake reserve for wisdom, calculation for consideration. Within 6 months, they elected me vice president of the chapter. Me, the new guy from Chicago, trusted with leadership. It would have been funny if it wasn't so useful. Chapter 3. The basement door. I told Marlon I needed space for my tools. The KFC franchises required maintenance work, minor repairs, inventory management, equipment upkeep. Made sense to have a workshop at home, save money, be self-sufficient. She nodded, believed, probably relieved I was showing initiative in our new life. Bought a padlock at the hardware store on 4th Street. Good one. Master lock. Heavy and serious. Painted the basement door a fresh coat of white so it looked maintained, respectable, intentional. Hung a small sign. Workshop. Please knock. Like I was running a business down there, instead of building a cathedral. Said it was safer that way, keeping tools locked up, preventing accidents. She believed me, or maybe she just didn't want to know. People love to believe ignorance is protection. They call it trust, call it respect for privacy, call it anything except what it really is. Willful blindness. I began spending nights downstairs. Not every night at first, just occasionally. Late, after she'd gone to bed. After the neighborhood had gone dark and quiet. She said she could hear me moving around. Asked what I was doing at 2 a.m. Inventory, I told her. Planning. Thinking. Sometimes I can't sleep, and working helps. She smiled. She always smiled. Touched my face. Told me I worked too hard. Worried I'd burn myself out. Never asked why inventory required locks. Never questioned why planning happened at hours when decent people slept. The basement smelled of metal, oil, and damp earth. The bulb hummed like a wasp nest. 60 watts of yellow light that made shadows dance in corners. I made lists, drew plans on graph paper, arranged tools by size, weight, function. Screwdrivers smallest to largest, hammers by head weight. Rope organized by thickness and length. Order gave me peace. each tool a promise of control, each nail a sentence waiting for context, each length of rope a solution of problems not yet encountered. I built a workbench against the far wall. Sturdy construction, 2x4s and plywood with a vise mounted on the corner. Installed pegboard above it, painted white. Hung tools in neat rows with their outlines traced in black marker. When something was missing, you'd know. When everything was in place, the pattern was perfect. Control was the only prayer I had left, the only ritual that mattered, the only thing I could trust when everything else, marriage, work, identity, normalcy, felt like performance without substance. Down there, in the dark, with the locked door between me and the world, I could stop pretending, could let the mask slip, could be the thing I really was instead of the thing I showed them. The headaches were gone completely now, replaced by clarity, purpose. Understanding that the boy who'd survived the strap and learned from the truck had become a man who knew exactly what he needed. Chapter 4. The first one. His name was Wayne Russell, or maybe Wade Richardson. The details blur sometimes, names mattering less than what they represent. Young, barely 20, thin in that way that suggested growing up without quite enough. Eager to please in that way that suggested never quite belonging. He came to one of the JC's late-night gatherings at Danny's place, brought by Bill Henderson, who'd met him at the VFW and thought he'd fit in. Friend of a friend, drifter passing through, looking for work and community and the kind of acceptance that makes you overlook red flags. We drank. We laughed. He bragged about being able to hold his liquor, always the sign of someone who can't. I told him he couldn't last 3 shots. He said, "Bet me." Pride. That's what killed him, really. Pride and trust, and the fundamental human error of believing friendly faces can't hide hungry teeth. When he passed out, faster than 3 shots, turned out 2 was plenty. I helped him to the car. Bill had left already. The bar was closing. Someone needed to make sure the kid got home safe. I volunteered. Of course I volunteered. That's what good community members do. "Where are you staying?" I asked, loading him into the passenger seat of my Ford. He mumbled an address, or maybe he didn't. Doesn't matter. And drove him home, or said I would. We stopped first at my house. Just for a while, I said. Let him sleep it off on the couch before trying to get him wherever he was going. Made sense. Responsible. The kind of thing the helpful guy does. Marlin was visiting her sister in Cedar Rapids. Gone for the weekend. Timing. Downstairs, the air was cold. March in Iowa. Last gasps of winter seeping through foundation. The bulb flickered once, then steadied. He woke up groggy on the concrete floor where I'd laid him, confused, trying to remember where he was and why. "You're at my place," I told him. "You passed out. Thought I'd let you sleep it off somewhere safe." He tried to stand. I told him to sit. He did. People follow instructions when they're disoriented, when authority sounds confident, when they think someone's trying to help. It didn't happen all at once. There's a moment before violence where everything goes quiet, like the air holds its breath, like the universe pauses to see what you'll do, like God himself is watching to see if you'll cross the line or step back. Then instinct takes over. The hands move, The body follows. The head just watches, detached, cataloging, taking notes for later. When it was over, I sat on the floor for a long time. The drain gurgled softly, like it was whispering its approval. The bulb hummed its steady frequency. The basement held its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. I cleaned, wrapped, removed, order restored. Same principles I'd learned in Chicago, refined here. Every surface, every tool, every trace. When I was done, the basement looked exactly as it had before. Perfect, pristine, pure. I told myself it was mercy. He'd stopped being part of the noise, stopped taking up space he didn't know how to fill, stopped suffering the confusion of being unwanted and lost. I was doing him a favor. That's what I told myself. That's what the ledger recorded. I slept that night without dreams, without headaches, without the hum. Just quiet. Deep, absolute quiet. Chapter 5. Domestic Light. The next morning, the kitchen smelled of coffee and bacon. Sunday light through yellow curtains. Marlin was home, had driven back early, was humming along to the radio while she cooked breakfast, like a scene from a commercial for normal life. She told me I looked better, healthier, rested. You sleep okay? Best night I've had in months, I said. Truth. She kissed my cheek and called me her rock. Funny word, rock. Something solid, unmoving, cold, foundation that everything else builds on. Weight that holds things down. At church that Sunday, First Presbyterian on Washington Street, where all the respectable families went, the pastor spoke about redemption. Reverend Miller, kind eyes and soft hands, voice like warm honey. He said sin, when confessed, loses its hold, that God forgives all who truly repent, that grace is available to anyone who seeks it. I nearly laughed. Had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep face neutral. Confession doesn't free a man. It just transfers the burden, creates witnesses, makes your sins someone else's responsibility. I prefer to keep mine balanced, organized, internal. The ledger stays with me. The congregation saw what they wanted. A polite husband sitting beside his devoted wife. A rising businessman in a good suit. A man of service who volunteered for committees and helped with fundraisers. They nodded at me, shook my hand after the service, praised my dedication to the community. None of them knew that dedication can look the same as damnation if you squint. That service and predation use identical tools, just different targets. That the helpful man and the dangerous man wear the same face because they're the same person. Every compliment felt like permission. Every handshake an absolution. Every moment of trust, proof that the system worked, that I could be both things at once, the man they saw and the thing they didn't, without contradiction, without detection, without consequence. Marlin squeezed my hand during the sermon about redemption, smiled up at me like I was her salvation. I squeezed back, played the part, thought about what was buried beneath our rented basement floor, and how easy it had been, how easy it would be again. Chapter 6. The second one. The second one came in the fall. October. Leaves turning, air getting sharp. A drifter named Earl or Emil or something with an E showed up at one of the KFC locations looking for work. Said he'd wash dishes, sweep floors, anything. I told him I could use an extra hand. Not at the restaurant. I had full staff there. But I had projects at home, maintenance work, things that required muscle. Cash under the table, few hours work, fair pay. He followed me home without hesitation. People always do, when you speak with confidence, when you present opportunity wrapped in reasonable explanations, when you look like someone who belongs, who has authority, who wouldn't possibly be anything except what they appear. It's strange what routine can do. How quickly horror becomes habit, terror becomes tedious, murder becomes method. There was no hesitation this time, no moment of doubt, no pause to reconsider. Only procedure, a practiced rhythm of preparation, action, cleaning, like factory work, like prayer, like any other skill you improve through repetition. The second taught me something the first hadn't, that the act itself wasn't the point. The point was possession, not of their bodies. Those were just obstacles, problems requiring disposal, but of their existence. To erase someone and know you were the last witness to their name, the final person to see them alive, the sole repository of their ending. That's power distilled, to hold someone's entire conclusion in your hands and know that no one else will ever know what really happened. That families will wonder. Police will investigate and abandon. Communities will whisper and forget. But you'll know. You'll always know. And that knowledge is yours alone. Afterward, I wrote a list in my ledger. Not of names. Names don't matter. Just numbers and dates and lessons learned. This is what the second one taught me. Methodical. Number 1. Never rush. Time invested in preparation saves hours in cleanup. Number 2. Never repeat the same mistake. Learn from each iteration. Number 3. Never let the eyes stay open when you clean. Harder to work when they're watching. Number 4. Always seal the drain first. Prevents backflow, containment issues. Number 5. Music helps. Radio turned low. Something steady. Makes time pass. Order again. The only constant that never betrayed me. The only truth that held regardless of circumstance. Chaos was the enemy. Organization was salvation. Control was God. The basement was becoming what it needed to be. Not just storage, not just workshop. Laboratory. Temple. The organized expression of everything the strap and the rosary and the migraines had taught me. Down there, in the locked room beneath the rented house in respectable Waterloo, I was building something. Not just hiding bodies, building a system, a method, a practice that could scale, that could continue, that could become as natural as breathing. Chapter 7. The Whisper in the Pipes. Winter fell heavy that year. Iowa winter. different from Chicago. Quieter, deeper, more absolute. Snow packed against the basement windows. Small rectangles near the ceiling, ground level outside. Muffling the world. The furnace clicked its rhythmic conversation. Pipes moaned as water expanded and contracted with temperature changes. At night, the sounds blended into something almost melodic. A hum deep beneath the floor, coming from somewhere in the infrastructure. Familiar. Comforting. Like the frequency from my childhood migraines, but external now. The house itself speaking the language I'd learned. Marlin said she could hear things sometimes. Noises from below. Strange rhythms that didn't match footsteps or work. Asked if it was the wind getting in through cracks. Asked if we should call the landlord. I told her yes. Just the wind. Just old pipes. Just the house settling. She believed me, because believing was easier than investigating. Because questioning meant doubting, and doubting meant seeing things she didn't want to see. One night in January, standing by the basement door at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, I listened. The whisper came again. Not words, just rhythm, pattern, communication. I realized the house had learned to breathe with me, to keep my secrets, the drain, the lock, the walls. They all understood. Infrastructure has memory, learns from use, adapts to purpose. The basement was becoming complicit, becoming partner, becoming sacred space where boy and man and monster could exist without contradiction. That's when I made the decision. The padlock wasn't enough. Functional but insufficient. I needed something with more weight, more ceremony, more meaning. I needed a key. Not for protection. The lock was fine for that. But for ritual. For symbolism. For the understanding that what happened behind that door was sacrament, not crime. Was correction, not murder. Was order, not chaos. A key that would turn a basement into a kingdom. A simple space into sacred ground. A rental property into the first real home I'd ever had. I ordered it custom from a locksmith in Cedar Rapids. Special tumbler pattern. Impossible to duplicate without the original. Brass construction that felt heavy in your palm. Cost more than it should have. Worth every penny. When it arrived, I stood in front of that basement door for 10 minutes, just holding it. Feeling its weight, understanding what it represented. Pause, permission, authority, territory, mine. Next entry, I'll write about that key, about what it unlocked and what it locked away, about how a piece of brass became scripture, how a basement became cathedral, how a man became something else entirely. The one that made me realize I'd never truly leave Waterloo. That Waterloo was just the beginning of understanding what I'd been built to become. Order remains. The key turns. The kingdom waits. End of entry 7.